So, in just doing an expansion draft yesterday that seemed to garner a lot of interest. So let's take it a step further. How will the Vegas Golden Knights look next season? And with what I think they can gather through expansion, they get a pretty good team. Now, I've got a few names in red here because I'm saying they're either UFA, Trevor Daley, Michael Del Zotto on the blue line, or a trade, Rick Nash out of New York. Vegas takes on the cap hit, probably gets the Rangers to give up a prospect, probably something sweet, because if the Rangers don't win the Cup this year, and the odds are not in their favor right now, I would think Rick Nash is on his way to New York. Just personally speaking. Now, the problem I'm having is this. I can come up with 4 lines. I have no problem coming up with 4 lines using the players that are drafted, or I did a redraft this morning, and no matter how I do this, Jakob Silverberg seems to be the only first liner, and that's borderline first liner. I considered putting Bobby Ryan on this board, but I don't know that Vegas would want Bobby Ryan. Nash at least has the potential. I don't think Bobby Ryan has the potential anymore to be a 25-30 goal scorer. So second line, and again, these lines are all interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, Wingles, Boma, and Kuhnhackl. Kuhnhackl can definitely play second line on an expansion team. Down the middle, got Nemesnikov, Yarncroke, and Holla. Yeah, I grabbed Holla from Minnesota this time. And on the right side, Letestu can play center. Stempniak and Smith-Pelly. Smith-Pelly can play the left side. Wingles can play the right side. Stempniak can play the left side. Like, these guys are interchangeable. These are guys that can move around this lineup. The big gaping hole for Vegas and for almost any expansion team is going to be that first line center spot. Now, I debated about saying, well, maybe they win the draft lottery and they draft Nolan Patrick. George McPhee is not going to take Nolan Patrick and put him as a first line center on an expansion team. Patrick Steffen called and said, don't do it. On the blue line, I got Daley and Del Zotto. And Del Zotto's not really a top 2 guy. And then I got Jordy Ben, Nick Holden from the Rangers, Stephen Johns from Dallas, Robert Bertuzzo from St. Louis, and Brandon Manning's down here as the number 7 guy. The defense is going to be in flux, and this is a very anemic blue line in terms of scoring. So their number 1 draft pick, probably going to be a defenseman. In goal, they're set. Scott Darling and Philip Grubauer. They're set. And they're set for years to come with that tandem, as far as I'm concerned. Grubauer is one of my favorite backups, and Darling is a starter in disguise. So the question then becomes, what gets moved off this team? Holla would have some interest. I honestly think it's a tough call. Wingles, out of Ottawa's would have interest. Kuhnhackl would have interest as well. But this lineup meets the requirements of the salary cap. And I think it's competitive. I do. I think this team wins its share of games. It wins them 2-1 or 1-0. But it wins its share of games. There's not a lot of age on this team. So it's a young team. I know Calgary fans are going to go, Lance Boma. Look, Calgary's going to lose a good forward. Calgary is going to lose a good forward. And that's just reality. A lot of teams are going to lose good players. You'll notice there's no Maple Leaf on this board because there's no Maple Leaf that would be exposed that I think would make the lineup. But that's because the Maple Leafs have so many guys on entry level and so many young guys that they don't really have to worry about this expansion. Now, when the next expansion happens to 32 teams, Toronto may have a problem if the rules are the same as they are for this one. But I like this lineup a lot. This is what I think we're going to look at for Vegas in terms of their opening lineup. And certainly, these are names that are interchangeable with a lot of other guys that are available. Pittsburgh is going to have a number of attractive contracts and players. And if they decide to go older, if George McPhee sits down, looks at the list, and he says, okay, well, I wanted young and fast, but there's a lot of good veterans in here. This lineup looks completely different. This lineup looks completely different if he decides to go in that direction. Silverberg, though, that would hurt. But if Silverberg's protected, then Vatanen is the #1 defenseman, and that's where Anaheim's got a problem, because of the no movement clause, no trade clause for Kevin Bieksa, their blue line is vulnerable because they have to protect Vatanen, Fowler, and Lindholm. Now, because BX is an automatic, they can only protect 4 forwards. So while I have Silverberg here, Cogliano can be taken as well, because they have auto protects on their forwards too. No movement, no trade kills teams in this situation. And in terms of Boma, if Vegas decides, well, we'll just go for a veteran guy who can step in and be a good team guy, Matt Stajan is stuck in the center spot here. I've always liked Stajan. I don't have a problem with Stajan. He's not a scorer by any means, but you put Stajan in here, then you give Nemestikov, Yarncroke, Haula, and Stajan a chance to rotate out those 4 center spots. You give Letestu a shot at center when you're playing on the power play. This would be decent special teams. I would think Letestu, Silverberg, Wingles up front on the power play, Daly and Holden on the blue line for the power play. You might do all right. But again, I don't think this team finishes 31st overall. I think whatever happens next year, goaltending and defense is going to make sure that this team that paid $500 million to get into the NHL, they're going to be better than people think they're going to be. Tell me in the comments below why I'm wrong. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And due to the fact there are no children here and it is a relatively quiet home today, I've decided to bring the show downstairs into the living room where it's a little bit brighter. And I will be talking about standings and things that are going on right after this video. But I wanted to do one more thing on the Knights, because now that the trade deadline's over, this is the next big thing. This is the next big thing. And there are going to be trades made by teams to make sure that this lineup doesn't look like this. Believe me, Anaheim is going to be working the phones to make sure that Silverberg, Vatanen, all the guys who could be expansion draft exposed aren't. Now, I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to park anymore. Before the expansion draft I'm trying to remember, I think it was it was Florida, Anaheim. When Florida and Anaheim were coming in, there were a number of players who got parked. So you would take your guy and say, I don't want him exposed. You call another GM and say, we're going to send him to you for future considerations. After the expansion draft, after you've protected him for us, you'll send him back to us and we'll send you this prospect as a thank you for making sure we don't lose him. Pretty sure they can't do that. I'm pretty sure they can't do that. I haven't explicitly heard that, but I'm pretty sure the NHL wants the lineup to look competitive. Wants it to look like this. Wants it to be one player away. Like, Joe Thornton's a free agent this summer, potentially. You plug Thornton in there, who knows? Vegas could be a contender for the playoffs. You put Thornton between Nash and Silverberg, you've got a first line. You got a first line. It's not a great first line, but it is an actual legitimate first line in the NHL. So, and I'm just using Thornton as an example. So, San Jose fans, you don't need to type anything in the... I know, I'm just using him as an example. This is the glaring hole in the Vegas lineup. No matter how I draw it up, no matter how I draft it, this is where they're going to have a problem. They need that name, that #1 center. And I even looked through overpriced NHLers. I'm looking for bad contracts. That's where Nash comes from. And there has to be a overpriced player. So who do you think is going to end up being the #1 center for the Vegas Golden Knights? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe. 2,800 people have hit that like button. 2,800. As this channel continues to flourish. And I thank you guys for that. I thank all of you who've been here from the beginning. And for those of you who are new, welcome. And there will be plenty more content coming up later today.